Good morning, Sierra.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
It is, I was going to make a joke about it being the middle of the week, but it's Thursday, so I think
Needs
that
to be a
also is telling.
needs to be a little bit later.
Right? Welcome, folks who are joining. I'm just going to toss the agenda in the chat in case you don't already have it, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. All right. I just posted the agenda in the chat again for those folks who are just joining us. If you could, on the agenda, please add your name and the organization you're with. Just helps us, know who's coming to these meetings. Um, Additionally, the first topic on this agenda is just asking folks what version you're on, and if you have any upgrade plans, feel free to put that in the chat or just edit the document and add info for your group. Um, yeah, then we still have some folks trickling in, so I will not move on just yet. Right. We are also recording this meeting as well. It should have given folks the notice when they logged on. Once we have this done, we will get Rogan to upload this to the Evergreen YouTube channel. Um, so folks who aren't here can definitely, keep up with the meeting. This is great. More and more people keep coming. Okay. Cool. So yeah, the first thing on the agenda, aside from just, folks adding their versions and any upgrade plans, is just follow-ups from the Evergreen conference. Does anyone want to kick us off and, talk about anything they presented or anything that they learned at the conference? I didn't attend, so I will not be talking.
I really appreciated your presentation, Jordan and Mark, on the Aspen, the new Aspen features. So that was something that was helpful. We got upgraded so that we could do materials requests or do the checking items in the catalog for materials requests. Still not working exactly right, but we're working on it. So, but I have a lot of staff who are very excited about that feature.
Nice. I think there's some more tweaks to that coming too. So I think there's a lot of people that are interested. So I would expect to see that feature getting a little bit better and better, even more so over time.
Some more cool stuff for materials requests coming this month too. So the 2506 release has a bunch of cool stuff for materials request as well.
Sorry, you said June, right, Mark? Oh, 06? Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
the 06.
Yeah. I was like typing and I typed it wrong and then, questioning myself. All right. Anything else folks want to talk about from the conference? This was really only just put on here as a maybe we'll have stuff to talk about. So if we don't, that's also fine.
The presentations are available online. They were recorded and available online. Is that right?
Yes, they should be. Let me see.
These, if I may jump in, the
Yes.
slides are available online now at the Evergreen website. The presentations themselves, the video recordings are not yet. They will be soon.
Thank you.
And just to let folks know, we are actually moving to a new YouTube channel. The previous YouTube channel had, the existing one had been created by somebody who's not in the community any longer, and a new one is being created under the control of a community controlled account. But we'll be running both parallel for a while, so they'll be uploaded to both.
Cool. Uh, so Rogan, speaking of YouTube, do we want to talk a little bit about aligning this group with other Evergreen groups?
Sure. I guess they're good as segues any. Um, it just occurred to me the other day, Sierra and I chatted briefly about this, that this is functionally an Evergreen group, the same way that other Evergreen interest groups are. And we're uploading the videos to the YouTube channel already. That's already in the works. So do we want a mailing list and to list it on the Evergreen website and all that? Um, Obviously, the mailing list would not necessarily take the place of Slack. It would be supplementary to it. But some people like mailing lists and like having things pushed to them rather than have to go look at it. And it's just kind of expected in the Evergreen community as one of the standards. So I thought I'd throw that question out.
We're seeing some yeses. Right. Oh, that's good to know. I didn't realize, Jordan, that other ILS groups have their own mailing list, but
Is it just the Sierra group and Koha groups, or just Sierra?
I think it's just Sierra. Koha, I think, uses the standard one, but then some of the other subgroups, like the Lita subgroup and the catalogers also have their own.
Yeah.
oh yeah, I
Right.
am on the catalogers. I should know that.
It seems like there's most consensus for it, at least of those who spoke up. So I'll proceed with that plan. Okay.
Thank you, Rogan. And then I'm just going to assume that we do want to add this to the community Evergreen community website. Yes, I see nods.
Yeah. And the sort of standard format for those entries, but it's not encoded in stone anywhere, is to list the regularity at which we're meeting and directions to the email list. But I can put in, for convenience, links to Jira and Slack as well.
Great, thank you. All right. Anything else on that topic before we move on? Sweet. So the next thing on this list is a small update. I'm not sure which version this would be in at the moment, but I just wanted to share an update. Bywater, Imani from Bywater did some development to allow both the copy note or the item note body and the title to appear in Aspen in the under the notes section of the copies table. We are in the middle of testing this. So far, everything looks good. We're just waiting to see, how it goes with more weekly updates and updates happening. Currently, only the bodies show in Aspen, but this will just also include the titles. I don't know if anyone else uses this as much as our libraries do, but if you do, that is hopefully coming in the future. And then we can talk about development stuff and priorities. This is kind of a continuing. Elizabeth, would the copy notes visibility be optional? That is a good question. I don't know. We can definitely ask. Um, Let me see. I will say I don't believe, I mean, just because we didn't have to turn it on doesn't mean there's not an on or off switch. Um, but I can definitely ask.
Quick look at the
Thank
code
you,
as well to
Lauren.
see. Yeah.
See, this is why we love having developers in here.
Thanks. I just ask because we have some who use them for more, jargony internal notes, and it's not something they really want patrons to see. So,
Oh yeah, no, see, a lot of our libraries are using it for example, like museum passes,
hmm
right? Note, call the library to reserve or,
okay.
things like that. So in our case, right, a lot of libraries are using that, but that's good to know. I think
hmm
I think a lot of our libraries put, I mean, I hope a lot of our libraries put the jargony stuff in like an item alert or something like that, or an
Mhm.
account alert.
Yeah. Yeah. We use tags for
Okay.
stuff like that. So,
Right. We're also on a very old version of Evergreen,
oh, okay.
right? Which does impact, I think, maybe some of these things, right? We're on 3.7.
Oh, okay. We're on 13. So,
Yeah,
okay.
we are planning on upgrading in October.
Oh,
I
fun.
think we haven't decided which version yet. We are talking about going to 3.15, at least a teen, 14 or 15, something like that, depending on how testing goes. Um, I'm gonna add this, some libraries include jargon comments. Oh yes, Melissa, that will be a very big job. It's gonna be a time. We'll see how that goes. Right? It was we didn't do a lot of change, or we didn't do updates because there were bugs, and then, you know, change and stuff, and now we're just gonna go big or go home.
Just to clarify, item notes have a checkbox for whether they're public or not. So that, and I'm not sure when that, if that came in at some point, but so I presume this would know enough to only show the ones that are marked as public. But I still think it would be a good idea to be able to have an option to not display notes at all, or only the public.
So there is an option in grouped work display settings to completely hide all item notes. And then I'm just looking at the code change that Amani made. It looks like it was mostly around dealing with, so it looks like there was the ability to see copy notes previously. And this is
Yes.
mainly dealing with the multiple copy notes being merged together. So turned off in grouped work display settings, this just makes it work with if you've got more than one note per item. Is that right? That was the goal.
Thank you.
Probably.
Oh, because yeah, there's the title and the body. So yeah. So it's getting more info. So
Does Imani's work take into account the updates to notes in 3.15? Andrea, I have no idea.
There were significant updates. That's why I'm calling that out.
Let us, that's good to know.
kind of updates were they?
I can link you to the release notes. There were many, many updates.
Okay. Might depend on how it gets exported. Because Aspen would just be using the exported version.
Is anyone on 3.15 yet? Looks like people are thinking about maybe upgrading in the future. This is also something I was going to ask, because this came up at a internal CW Mars meeting. We were like, I don't know if anyone is 3.15 yet. We would like to know. All right. I know I can say at least, so CW Mars, we do have a test server for Aspen, and that is connected to our Evergreen dev server, which is set up to, I think we just updated it to 3.15, or we're talking about updating it to one of the point releases. There's a lot of conversations happening, but I can, if anything, I can always follow up with Imani and do some testing on our test server and see how that looks. Oh, thank you, Andrea, for that launchpad bug. For all the item alerts, notes, tags, all that fun stuff. Cool.
So just to add, for Elizabeth's original question, which I think was maybe asking about the Evergreen visibility, it looks like Aspen is, at least on ours, is still displaying copy notes that are not marked as public, from what I can see. So I'll bet that that would have to be something that would maybe have to be changed at the export point from Evergreen.
Yeah. And I don't see anything looking in the code looking specifically to check to see if it should or shouldn't be public. So
That's a good idea. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, if public and private is maybe in a later version of Evergreen, that might also be something. I'll have to talk to some of our folks because we, at least to my knowledge, I don't think we've talked about public and private notes, but if we have them, I would like to look at that. This was on your production instance, Dan, that you can see the private notes showing.
Yeah, that's on our production instance.
Okay. Cool. I'm glad I brought this up because now we have some things to look into and feedback and stuff. This is why we have these meetings. Does anyone else have any like questions or thoughts? I can go after this meeting and, talk to the folks on my end who are doing more of this testing and, see what we can get. I'll follow up with Imani on some of these questions as well.
I guess my only follow-up question would be, since would this same code be applicable to tags? Or could it be repurposed for tags as well?
it does not look like it's looking at tags, but probably. So it would definitely take some dev to do. But
Okay.
yeah, it'd be similar
Yeah.
code probably, but we need to look at the export and that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, we use the tags for our digital book plates. So for memorials and donations and such, and people really like seeing that in the catalog. So
See, that's why we have the notes. That's literally people want to see those, donated by John Smith in, whatever, or, donated in honor of so and so. Okay, so some to-dos on this. We have some questions to ask Imani. We'll also check out what it looks like on our test server, since that's on 315. And then private, public notes. Okay.
Yeah, actually, on that public-private note thing, I'm not 100% sure if it's displaying them, because I think that the one that I tested on production has the same note both as public and private. So that's kind of what happens when you try to do a quick query with live data. So it's actually possible that it's not displaying. So I want to take back what I said, if that's all right, because I'm looking at it a little bit closer now, and I don't think that it is actually showing.
Cool. I'm gonna just strike this out so we can we talked about it. I'll also, like I said, I'll follow up too with our folks and see if we have private note, because I don't even know if we have libraries using private notes and stuff. But I will check on that and I'll send a follow-up just in the Evergreen like Slack channel, and I'll add it to the meeting notes after. And then we can actually see if at least if potentially there are private notes showing that shouldn't be showing. All right. So we got some to-dos on that, and we'll talk about that at the next meeting. Thanks, everyone. And then the last topic is really, a few topics, I guess. This is continuing the discussion from the last meeting about ranking our development priorities. So the top thing that we had talked about last time was cover image syncing between Evergreen and Aspen. We talked about potentially turning this into a JIRA ticket. We also mentioned that a specific API to pull covers from Evergreen would be helpful. I don't know if we have anything new to add to this, but if this is a issue we would like to turn into a JIRA ticket, we could do that.
I think this is a wonderful idea. This is something that we would really love to have. We don't want to maintain cover images in two places. We use custom cover images extensively in Evergreen for local things, library of things, anything that is missing a cover image, but that for some reason we really care about having, and being able to sync those up would be great.
Cool. Let's see. Leo in the chat, does Evergreen have an existing API endpoint to pull images? I believe no. I think this is something we need to do development for both ends on, if I remember correctly from our last discussion.
I remember from last time as well, so.
Cool. So I mean, do we want to turn this into a JIRA ticket? Maybe, I don't know if it would also be good to have this as like a launchpad ticket if the ask would be to have a new Evergreen API or something like that. There are other people in me who are more well versed in this. Okay, people are posting in the chat. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
try to type that all in here.
Yeah, to echo what Jeff is saying in chat, there's not an existing endpoint to pull a specifically uploaded cover from Evergreen. You make an HTTP call, and basically it will default to pulling a locally uploaded one if it's available, but if not, pull from whatever sources are configured after that, such as Syndetics or Content Cafe or whatever. So that would need a little bit of dev work on the Evergreen side to make sure that it's only pulling a uploaded cover if that's present.
Be nice to get a list of which records do have uploaded covers too, and then we could kind of optimize that so we're not going back to it all the time.
Yeah, that's fairly
But yeah,
simple. I
yeah,
mean, basically, it's not terribly similar to how the local covers are stored in Aspen. They're basically stored with as their as files with their record IDs on the server side.
yeah. Is there
Not
anything in the database to say that it's
no.
connected or no? So
Yeah, that's where the analogy breaks down.
yeah. But yeah, if there was like an API that said, hey, here are the records that have it, then Aspen could say, oh, well, we already have those. Or here are the records that we have local images for with the last modified date. And then we can not have to have a ton of network traffic all the time. But
Yeah. And I've not looked at the specifics, but I mean, I'm sure it's doable with a bit of work.
yeah, without an API, we could maybe export it into like that supplemental directory or something. So
Yeah, I've been actually just experimented with that yesterday and need to go back and test it today. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I got a lot of this in the notes. Please like go in and correct anything that I missed. Um, so do we want to make this a JIRA ticket just for documentation for the group? Yeah, I see some nods.
I say yes.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea.
All right. Does anyone want to volunteer to do that? I can always do that. I just fear that I may not have enough knowledge to like write that up well.
I am not a terribly verbose ticket writer, but I'll be glad to do it.
Thank you, Rogan. Honestly, my only fear is like writing it up and then saying something wrong because I don't understand.
I just assume someone will correct me later if I am on some detail.
All right, we're all working together. It's fine. Thank you for writing that up. The other topic that had come up at the previous meeting, based on our conversations from the last meeting, sounds like it's more of a systems thing rather than a dev thing. So I just included that since we had talked about it, but I don't think this is something we need to necessarily have as a development priority at the moment. How do other folks feel?
Probably some dev things we could do, but I think there's a lot of system stuff as well. So problem is we get too good at pulling stuff and we bring the Evergreen server down, which isn't what we want. But at some point too, if like, because right now we are relying on database exports for a lot of that. So the more we can do with APIs, we can bring some of that time down, because we can look it up a little bit more directly. Just because of the way the like file transfers work now, there is inherently a delay where it might be we push data changes out every 5 minutes from Evergreen, and then Aspen checks every 5 minutes for new things. So it might be effectively 10 minutes before things go across.
My thought is, and I'm coming at this not knowing, I'm just really starting to dig into the Aspen code, so I don't know it really well yet. But in my mind, this is kind of two different issues to prioritize. One, moving towards a connection with the Evergreen RESTful API for those who upgrade to Evergreen with that. And then separate from that any other development tasks that might improve speed. Because to me, the RESTful API work is higher priority and the maybe other stuff, which might be much more convoluted, is lower. Would you agree, Mark?
Yeah, if we could use that API, that would make life much, much easier
Right.
in many, many ways.
Exactly. And I think would have a speed improvement for updating, items.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, the way that we have it now is inherently filled with some delay. So, I mean, that delay shouldn't be hours, but it's inherently 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on configuration.
Right. There's a reason low latency systems in the world don't use FTP as their transfer method.
Ugh, oh goodness. Cool. Do we, uh, I don't know if this is something maybe jumping the gun. Do we want to create a JIRA ticket for like use Evergreen's RESTful APIs or something like that, just so it's like documented as something to work on? Or is that too soon?
I don't think it hurts to have it, and then we can have a bunch of subtasks in it eventually, potentially.
Well, isn't the API available now in 3.15?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
But I
So-
don't know without looking if it has an image endpoint available or if that would have to be added.
The image endpoint, I'm pretty sure would have to be added, but that's only one part of many things to be done with the API. So yeah, I think if we can have a sort of encapsulating, use the RESTful API ticket that can be expanded on with subtickets later, that makes sense to me because it's going to break down into a lot of subtasks.
Yeah, or even if it's one big spec that we work on, and then it depends on how quickly we implement, because it could be implemented as one big project as well, but or we can break it up. But yeah, a ticket seems like a good thing.
Cool. Does anyone want to make that? I can also just make one that just says use RESTful API for Evergreen.
I think that's all it has to say for now.
Right? Yeah, cool. I can do that. And so then that'll be set up. So if you have the like Evergreen ILS like issues filter, that should show up in there. Sweet. The new thing that I added, this is something that has come up for us like occasionally, obviously less so now that we're live on Aspen, but we do still have staff for some of these super user patrons placing meta record holds for patrons. So, patron wants the new James Patterson, they don't care if it's a regular book or a large print or an audiobook, they just want it. So staff place the hold and whatever comes in will come in for that patron and fill the hold. What happens in Aspen is these holds, when they're on the titles on hold page, show the wrong title because Aspen is looking at the hold target and assuming that it is the bib record ID. So we've had instances where, I don't know, I'm just going to name random titles, but we have a patron who's placed a hold on some like nonfiction history book and it shows up as some like YA title in their titles on hold because it's matching to that bib record instead of the meta hold target ID. When the item is checked out, it shows up correctly. It's only an issue when it's on hold. There is not currently a JIRA ticket for this. From my understanding, this requires development. I don't know. I think from the last time we talked about it, it might only be on the Aspen side, but it may also need dev on the Evergreen side. Not really sure. But does anyone else have issues with this? Like, is anyone else having, library staff placing meta record holds for their patrons or anything like that?
Well, I have a quick question, just to make sure I understand the scope of the issue. And if it's really just meta records, are there issues with, say, volume holds or copy level holds also? If it's assuming that the target is a bib?
So, from my testing, I believe those show correctly, but now I want to check.
I feel like we need to be sure.
Right? So you said volumes and what was the other one? Copy
Copy
holds?
level. Now,
Yeah.
admittedly, those are uncommon, and some libraries don't even let patrons do them, but they do enable them for staff pretty commonly, especially copy level holds.
And patrons, unless you've got some custom stuff going on, patrons should also be able to place meta record holds, just in general. Like that's
Yeah.
not a staff only thing.
In
Right.
Aspen?
Well, in Evergreen in
Evergreen.
general.
Well, yeah, so
Yeah.
they can, I think, maybe do it in Evergreen. Honestly, I fully like didn't really use them until I learned
Yeah.
that patrons used them, right? I don't know if I would assume that we let patrons do that in the old catalog in Evergreen, but I don't know. At
Yeah,
least now, since we're on Aspen, it's a lot of staff doing it in the staff catalog.
yeah. The permissions vary from Evergreen institution to institution, but there are some really niche ones I'm not terribly concerned about, but copy and meta record are the two most common after title, with maybe volume on a third tier of use.
We do have specific handling for part holds, volume holds, copy holds, but
Okay,
not
great.
meta. So
Okay, great. So the scope is
yeah.
just meta records. Okay.
Yeah.
Yahoo,
And yeah,
that's
we
great.
keep talking to people about meta records and keeps being like, yeah, we don't want to deal with that yet. So it sounds like now is the time when we want to start dealing with meta records. And
Well, I don't know
Yeah.
if now's the time.
yeah.
It
Or at
shouldn't
least
be.
showing them it within the account. So
Yeah. And it shouldn't be terribly hard to handle the meta records.
Yeah, I
But
think
yeah.
we had done a ticket about this, like, I don't know, last year. I think like when we first launched Aspen, John, one of my coworkers, had like put in, you know, the queries and stuff for what it's looking for and what it would need to look at.
Mhm.
I could grab that and put that in the
Um,
meeting notes if that would be helpful. But also, you know, I assume you understand this more, Rogan, dealing with that.
I mean, there's some technical details, but I mean, just big picture wise, basically, you're getting a list of bibs. I mean, on the construction side of the meta record, there's stuff about languages and other stuff, but Aspen doesn't have to care about that. Aspen would just need to get a list of those bibs that are put together when the meta record is retrieved. Now, that might get complicated in code. As I said, I'm just starting to dig into the code. I'll defer to Mark on that, but conceptually it's simple. Sometimes implementation is more complicated than concept.
yeah, I
Sierra, how
think
would you want the meta record holds to be displayed in terms of would you want Aspen to just show the representative grouped work, or would you want the end user to be able to see in Aspen that you're going to get one of these bibs?
I think honestly, the easiest would probably just be the grouped work, like title and cover image from that grouped work, because that's
Mhm.
really, I think, at least from when we've gotten complaints about it, it's been people being like, "This isn't what I placed a hold on."
Sure, because it's going to be
Right.
completely different if that ID happens to match. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that when
Whereas,
we've had it happen, it's been like, you know, like I said, like nonfiction to like a children's book or something like that. And so
right,
people get really wigged out thinking, is this what you are sending me? Because that's not what I want.
exactly. Yeah, whereas if it's a link to a grouped work and they click on the grouped work and it just so happens to show a couple different languages or the large print and, an audiobook if it happens to be, you know, there's some cases where the grouped work and the meta record may differ a bit, but at least getting it to the point of not treating the meta record ID as a bib ID would be an improvement. Thanks.
could maybe show the specific format selected or something, but so if it was like this is on the book and the large print or something like that.
Cool. Do we want to make a Jira ticket for this too? Or um do we I know Mark said, right, it's handling part and copy holds. So do we still want to just like confirm before we write that, or do we want to just roll with it?
I trust Mark's evaluation of that. No,
Right,
I
now we know who to
seriously.
blame.
Yeah.
Right.
And there
That's
was
what I'm
some
here
talk in
for.
chat where people had looked at copy level holds and other
Yeah.
things, and they seem to be working. So
Right.
I was just asking it because personally didn't know. I wasn't,
Right.
saying something wasn't working.
Yeah. Well, and there's
Just
handling there for it. I don't know if it works right, but I
well,
assumed it does.
that's a separate bug ticket.
It is, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I think they're working. but
Yeah,
also,
I'm fairly sure we tested all of that with you and
right? That's always it's one of those things where you start to question yourself.
Yeah. And I don't, and if somebody wants to test, I think, testing is great, but I think we can restrict this ticket to meta records. It sounds like.
Right? Yeah, Jordan, honestly, the number of times like libraries will ask me a question and I'm like, let's find out. I'll get back to you.
Doesn't change over time, partially because
Right?
Aspen's always changing.
Well, that's nice to hear that you guys have the same. It's not just me, right? Cool. So we'll make a JIRA ticket for this and we will limit it to just meta records. Cool. Is there anything else that folks want to talk about? That is the last thing I had on the agenda. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Type fast and forever. All right. Well, in that case, we can go ahead and end this a little early. Oh, wait, we say call number hold is showing title not available. Ooh,
what is the
that's something
hold
to look
type
into.
for that? Handle hold types of P, V, and C, and then assume everything else is title.
It's V.
V.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew and I said at the same time. The call number hold on the back end is V, which
Yeah.
stands for volume
V like
hold.
Victor.
Yeah.
I wonder if the volume information is not getting, because we look that up kind of backwards. So we say, okay, well, let's go get the volume from the information we have in Aspen, and then based off of that, we can find the record ID. If it doesn't find that, then it would show as title unavailable. So if you go into the bib record display for that title, there should be in
That's
the copies list a volume that would display.
Yeah, I can see ways where that might get lost.
Yeah.
That's another place where the RESTful API will be helpful because they'll give an
Oh, for
unambiguous
sure.
ID.
Yeah, and so we're looking for it based off the volume ID matching the target. So
Yeah.
definitely
Database
possible
side,
for,
the copies have a ID for the volume they're associated with.
yeah.
And so on the Evergreen side, when you select a volume, you're just putting in the available hold map, the copies that are attached to that volume. But that's not really exactly how it looks in the exported data, where it's just a label and record. But the volume isn't necessarily just on the record because the volume can be associated with a branch or system level or any org level.
Yeah, so we'd need to look at the data maybe.
Yeah.
So we might have another hold type issue, it sounds like. Are there any other types that we can think of that we should check?
There's a
I
force
mean,
hold, but it's pretty
say there's like,
obscure.
yeah, there's like 8 of them, but
Yeah.
the rest of them are very obscure.
Right.
And I believe the rest of them all have the target as the bib ID.
Yeah. They're just different
With
behaviors.
with the exception of the most obscure issuance holds. And
Oh,
I'm not
Doesn't
even
yeah.
and I'm not even mentioning parts here.
doesn't force hold get item though? Anyway,
Force hold, I'm sorry. Force hold is a copy level hold. It's just a special
yeah,
level of type of copy level hold. You're right.
yeah.
And Elizabeth points out something I'd forgotten, which is force is used with INSIP. So, yeah.
So we'll definitely need it to work.
But it can be treated as a copy hold, so that's good.
Okay. Okay.
All right. This is fun. I definitely have some ideas for things to include in my test plans moving forward.
Yeah. But I would argue those should be separate. I would personally argue those should be separate bugs from the meta record.
Right, like one, would you imagine one for each hold type? Or like meta record, and then here's the other weird obscure ones.
I personally would group them as here's meta record, here's the ones that should be treating bib ID but aren't, and I don't know if there are any of those. Here are those that should be looking at the volume and aren't, and here's the ones that should be looking at the copy and aren't. Does that make sense to you, Mark?
Yeah, I like that grouping. That sounds good to me.
Sorry, Rogan, can you just explain the grouping one more time so I can get this in the notes?
Okay, 4 tiers, meta record. Make sure all title targeting holds are targeting correctly. Make sure all volume level holds are targeting correctly, or call number level holds. Make sure copy level holds are targeting correctly. Because the
Cool.
variations really target those things, just different hold filling behavior on the Evergreen side, which Aspen doesn't need to care about.
Cool. I can definitely do some testing on our production and on our test server as well for some of these holds and see what that looks like. Do we, I guess for now, at least I think we should just start with the meta record ticket and then we can go from there.
It sounds like there's some additional testing required to confirm the need for the other ones.
Right.
But yeah.
Sweet. Test. All right. This was a productive meeting, y'all. We have a few tickets that we need to write up. We are going to get the recording set up and posted on the YouTube. And then who actually, one last thing, Rogan, as far as mailing lists, is that something you guys handle? Who actually makes the mailing lists?
I'll take care of it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Sure. I won't actually be the one creating it, but I'll poke the person who does.
Beautiful. Let me just get this in our notes. Cool. Okay. Yep. And then great. Our next meeting is scheduled for August because now we are meeting on the even months. I know we just had 2 meetings back to back, but we will next meet again on that first Thursday of August. I'm not sure what that date is, at 12 p.m. Eastern time. As always, if you have any like topics you want to add to the agenda, feel free to add those or bring it up in, Slack, mailing list, what have you. Other than that, see you guys next time or at other Aspen meetings. Right. Bye, folks.